Welcome to Rough Drafts, How God Writes His Love in Our Stories, a podcast that explores the faith journeys of our friends and neighbors in Burns, Tennessee. Everyone has a story to tell, and in this podcast, we'll hear powerful and inspiring stories of how God works in the ordinary lives of people like you and me. Our stories are unfinished and perfectly imperfect. They are just rough drafts, a glimpse of what is to come because God is still at work, writing plot twists, introducing new characters, and bringing good even from the most challenging circumstances. Join us as we see what God is up to in our stories. Here's your host, Matthew Hyatt.
Today's guest is one of the first people that I would call in the event of a zombie apocalypse or if the Chinese attack, because I think there is nothing that this guy can't do. He has fire training, he has medical training, he basically has his own farm, as best I can tell. He is a dad, he is a teacher, and he knows how to do all of the things that I don't know how to do, but he's got a really cool story to share with us today, too. Justin Dawson, welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Better than you.
Yes, super nervous.
You don't look happy to be here.
Well, I'm just not interesting. You know, I've, like I said earlier, I have listened to all the previous podcasts you've put out, and we were, my wife and I, Susan, were actually driving to Memphis, and we started listening to them, and about Jackson, I would say, I decided that I didn't want to do this anymore because everybody was way cooler than anything that I had ever done as far as having such an interesting story, because I mean, I'm pretty boring for the most part. I've kind of had a really easy life, really great childhood growing up. Never got in a lot of trouble. Was really involved in a youth group growing up. Went to White Blood Church Christ, and Al and Marcia Griffin were our youth leaders, and we're their family anyway. I'm related to Al and Marcia, but Al's like my second dad. Mm-hmm. He married Susan and I, drove to Michigan and to marry Susan and I.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's dedication, right?
Yeah,
so,
I don't like anyone that's
ordinarily you don't want to drive to Dixon to marry somebody,
that's
but
right. Montgomery Bell's too far. You know?
Yeah. So he and Marcia packed up and drove all the way about an hour north of Detroit to marry Susan and myself. And,
how did you and Susan end up together?
She chased me down, man.
Did she?
She really did, yeah.
Did she?
No, not really.
Okay, I didn't think so, but...
No. We met in college.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got out of high school, initially wanted to be a vet, of all things.
Really?
Yeah, and, God has a great sense of humor, and the irony of everything is that I hated chemistry.
Okay.
So I didn't really go down the vet route, and I went and got my degree in ag business.
Okay.
So I can, tell you how to grow corn and sell it for you.
Yeah.
And then now I'm a fireman, obviously. So
where you actually have more applied chemistry than you.
Yeah, and my side job is I fly around the country teaching chemistry to firemen. So there's the irony and the funny part of the story on that is that's how things come full circle.
Leslie's going to leave me for you. You know,
it's just no, she's way more in depth than I do. I do what I call street chemistry stuff. So
I'm more like, hey Leslie, if I mix these two cleaning supplies, how quickly will we all die?
Yeah, right.
That's sort of our question.
But I went to MTSU and met her first semester, and we just hit it off. We just became friends.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was for me. I loved her right out of the gate, but I think she was more along the lines of just trying to get me to leave her alone. So finally I wore down. And
how many restraining orders?
4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, 4 that I can talk about.
The gag order is still in effect on the other.
Yeah, 3 of them.
That's right.
Anyway. Yeah.
So
so that was back. We met in '97. So yeah, it's been a while. Married in 2000. I always I love that I got married in 2000 because I can always remember how many years I've been married.
Yes.
So that's perfect.
Yeah, we have to do math on ours.
Oh, yeah.
It's really problematic.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you should have waited.
we should have gone back in time. I think.
Right. Okay.
Or maybe we should have waited to 2010 or something. That way, at least easy math.
But yeah, we dated for quite a while. We were just friends. We were friends for a year or so, and then really started dating and got serious. And the rest is history. Four kids later, and there was a lot of struggle with that. But I'm sure we'll cross that bridge here in a second.
Sure.
But it was it's been the absolute best thing that has ever happened to me, because I feel real confident if I had not married Susan, I would have probably ended up like in jail or something, because she is the one that keeps me grounded all the time. She's like the complete opposite of everything that I am. I'm more of like high speed, wound tight all the time, just pinging back and forth, and she's just chill, And so when
She's chill, but she has an amazing sense of humor too.
she does, yeah, and I have, she's been around, firemen for 20 plus years now, and our sarcasm, and so it's rubbed off. It's really turned into something great. The only problem is our children have it too, but their timing's horrible. So anybody the 5 people that are listening to this, don't be afraid to smack them upside the head when they say something sarcastic to you, because they're trying to be funny, but their timing's horrible. We're working on it.
It's funny. I remember the first time I was a camp counselor for like middle school boys, and they're all insulting each other, and they're just doing such a bad job of it. And I realized, without meaning to, I started trying to teach them how to get better at being mean to each other. That's probably not the role I'm supposed to play here.
I have an uncanny ability for sarcasm, but my sarcasm sometimes can go a little too much, because I spend a third of my life with 7 other guys. Actually, yeah, there's 10 total, but at any point there's 7 of us together.
Yeah.
And we're all the same type of personality, and we're all, when it gets to kind of getting on each other, it can get pretty vicious, to the point my Susan does tell me a lot, like, you've got to have a filter. Like, that's the word, like the safe word. Like, she's like, filter, and I'll bring it back. But
there's something in first responder types. You guys tend to have a gallows humor, a dark sense of humor, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, that's the way we cope. There's so many times, like I've always said, that it's funny that when I talk to people and they find out that I'm a firefighter, they'll always be like, "Oh, I love watching Chicago Fire, and that's the greatest show ever." And I've never watched it.
Yeah.
Well, bits and pieces, until I find out that they're not sarcastic and mean to each other.
Yeah.
And so I turn it off, because it's not the real thing, And I know it's not a good show to watch at all. Probably like Rescue Me.
Yeah.
It's probably the closest thing to an actual firehouse as far as like them being just mean to each other.
Yeah.
I've had family members tell me, like, I would get on them hard enough, jokingly starting out, and then they'd be like, "Hey man, you're mean." And
Aw.
I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, wrong
Dial it back.
wrong place, wrong time."
So how did you end up doing firework?
Man, it was, I got all the way through to my senior year in college, and I knew about 2 years into college that this was something I was interested in, to the point that I dropped out of college for a semester, which I thought my parents were going to kill me, because my dad was so adamant about me getting a degree. He had fought through his job, because he didn't have one, and he just wanted the best for me. And so he was like, "You're going to college. You don't have a choice. It's either the military or college." And so I chose college, and so I got about 2 years in, realized, like, yeah, I'm not going to be a vet, but man, the fire department sounds like a pretty cool gig. Great schedule, good benefits, pretty fun job. Kind of exciting. And so I came home and told them I was going to drop out of college and go to EMT school to be an EMT, and they like blew a gasket.
Yeah.
And but they got cooler heads prevailed, and I think my mom stopped my dad from choking me out, and I ended up going to EMT school. Loved it.
Okay.
Got out, and I was like, well, I'm this close, I'm gonna go ahead and obviously finish college. So I went back to school at MTSU, and got all the way down to my senior year, happened to run in to a girl I knew in the lobby of the ag department, and was like, she had a union firefighter shirt on. I'm like, "Who do you know that's a fireman?" She goes, "My dad." I'm like, "No joke, really? You think he can get me a job?" She goes, "I don't know." Yeah, he got me a job.
That's cool.
Yeah, he got me a job I started at Murfreesboro and worked there a few years now, went to Nashville. Just family, like That's the only way I kind of like getting hired at Nashville. Sometimes it's kind of like the mob. You got to know somebody.
Yeah.
It's not like you can just walk off the street most of the time. So I just happened to know family who knew somebody, and I got a job, and that's 19 years ago.
19 years. You don't have too much longer before you can retire.
No, I don't. I got a few more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And it's not a train.
But right, and it's just kind of scary because it makes me realize I'm old. I'm like, oh golly, every guy I've heard talk about retirement's been old, and there I am.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm close. I'm close.
So you talked a little bit about life in fire hall. With the guys, you just have this fun, sarcastic. There is a real brotherhood in fire department.
Yeah, I think that's something you really can't recreate when you see it on TV, or you kind of got to live it, And I think it's because we get put in bad situations every 3 days.
Yeah.
I can really say there's not been very many shifts that we haven't made something that wasn't, I don't want to say traumatic, but you walk away from it and shake your head, and you either go, I can't believe we were just a part of something like this, or like, I can't believe that person walked away. I mean, golly, yesterday I was working and a road grader went backwards off the top of Brawley Parkway, the landfill.
Oh yeah.
The landfill mountain, the big, like trash mountain.
Yeah.
It lost power and rolled backwards off the hill, and then went end over end, ended up cutting the guy out, But like, when you're standing there looking around, you're like, how in the world does this stuff happen,
Yeah.
And so I guess that always being around that bad things, tragedy, it really brings you closer. It also makes you realize about what God does, man. Like, seeing things that there's no other way other than the Lord's hand having their hand on somebody and keeping them safe in, like, let's say, a bad wreck. Or you can just see the way of the world, man, how Satan is just out and about, and how he just steals, kills, and destroys. When he changes people's perception of things, and he's just so evil, and he's just everywhere. And because that's the downside to my job, is I get to see a lot of bad people do really bad things pretty consistently, to the point to where I'm it's kind of almost, I won't say a running joke, but at home, and Susan will even say it now, it's like they need to just ride with me for like a week, not a day, but for like a solid week, pull 24 hours, come in with me, because it just, when you see humanity at that level, how evil they can be to each other, and you can't imagine, and we've, you see it on the news, right? And it's not that, I won't say it's not that big a deal, but we've come so complacent to it, to where,
I mean, we see a shooting. There's a shooting on every single newscast of Nashville News.
Yeah.
And they don't even cover them all anymore. You just see it and you go, oh, okay, well, there's another shooting in East Nashville. Oh, there's another shooting in Antioch. Oh, there was another shooting. Oh, there's another road rage thing.
Yeah, and it's crazy that how complacent you can get to, or just glazed over to the fact of bad things. I love my job, but I hate my job.
Yeah.
Because it's taken my compassion away. That's probably the biggest thing I struggle with. Honestly, it's not going to bed at night or because I saw bad things. I mean, it's not that at all. It's never really bothered me. What bothers me is when I realize that I didn't have compassion when I should have, that I didn't extend grace like I should have. And that's the devil attacking me because of what I do and how I operate.
Well, I would think it has to get really easy to get really cynical when you pick up the same frequent flyer that you've picked up 75 times, who's mentally ill or addicted or just plain mean, because those are all different things.
Yeah, there's so many people out there that, legitimately need help. And then there's also people out there that are just, abusing the system. And I'm not trying to tell anything that anybody doesn't know, it's just, it would just be interesting I really wish people could just ride with me. That I think they would maybe get a little better grip on why I feel the way I feel sometimes about certain things. But
But we have jokingly called you the lifeguard of the gene pool some days.
oh yeah, I stop natural selection. You
Yeah.
know, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's always like some kind of stupid jackass stunt, you know, like off the movie, and we stop it.
Yeah.
You know,
Like, hey,
So-
if you didn't realize it wasn't a good idea to go shopping cart jousting
right?
during 4:40 at 2 a.m.
Yeah, it's. I mean, well, I've made that stuff. You know, we make a difference. So that's the cool thing. You know, like it was so funny last Sunday. You were talking about, you know, if I forgot who was fixing to have a baby. Who was that?
Kayla.
Kayla, right? So, and you were naming people in the audience, and I was ducking down like and turned my head and Susan was like looking at me, and I was like, I'm trying to. In my mind, I was thinking, man, I think I've delivered like 8 or 9 babies in the street.
Really?
Yeah. The last one was like in a Camaro in a mall. You know, I told the dude to sell the Camaro would never be the same.
That's right.
You know,
Or you got to keep it forever, and this is what the kid goes to prom in, and hopefully that
Yeah.
has an effect.
yeah, just full circle of life in your car.
That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy the stuff I get to do sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. What you've said already has kind of been interesting to me. I tend to think that the hard part of your job is, my goodness, you know, I see these horrible things. Your guys responded to Covenant.
Yeah.
Your guys responded to the Nashville, the bombing, the Christmas bombing.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think I'm hearing you say is that's the flashy stuff, but the hard stuff is the grind, the day in, the day out,
Yeah. Those big ticket events, those low frequency events right there. You know, we are part of it. The station I'm at does all the really cool stuff, the technical rescue stuff, they call it urban search and rescue, like structural collapse, and then they'll do hazmat and the hangle rescue, like ropes. And so we get to do, like, if there's anything like super bad in the city, we're a part of it.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, and that's pretty frequent that something goes on that we've got to be a part of like that. But yeah, the big ones, like you said Covenant, Christmas Day bombing, things like that, you know, they're horrible, absolutely horrible. They're highly publicized, so people know about them. But day in and day out, we make stuff all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and to where you genuinely, sometimes you feel like you make a difference. Sometimes you get just like, you really kind of get mad.
Yeah.
You know, like, man, I wish I could have done more. But sometimes you can't. So
That's just tough, you know, to think that, you know, the Covenant thing, it's news, and it will likely change the future of the state of Tennessee in terms of some legislation and stuff like that.
yeah,
But every day is just as likely that you pull 3 kids out of 3 different cars from 3 people who are texting and driving or drinking and driving.
Yes.
And because it happened differently, nobody, I don't want to say nobody cares. Somebody
well,
very much cares.
nobody's any the wiser.
Yeah.
You know, you just see it on the news that 3 people died in a car crash, and the backstories. I'm the one that ended up cutting them out and getting them out of the car or whatnot, and and you know that they were texting and driving, or you knew it was a road rage event, or you knew they were drinking. You know, and that's the stuff
when they're caught in somebody else's stupid.
Yeah. So that's the stuff that kind of gets under your skin sometimes, that you don't. Sometimes you may have a little hard. Myself and the guys I work with may have a little harder time dealing with, and that's where the compassion comes in. You know, where I'm like, I don't feel sorry for you when you do something stupid like this. You know, you brought it on yourself. And when I say that, I sound so bitter and so mean, and I'm not. I'm generally a very loving person. I promise.
But when you see it every day, it's just hard.
It is. But I try not to make a big deal about it. I mean, really, because I don't know. I mean, it shouldn't be. The more I make a big deal of it, the more it gets maybe emphasized a little bit more than it should, and it gets more publicity than it should.
Yeah.
And I just don't talk about it.
I mean, how many times in a week do you Narcan somebody?
4 or 5.
You know.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. That sentence, you know, oh yeah, I just Narcan 4 or 5. I just saved 4 or 5 people from overdosing. And like, on one hand, it's, I just brought someone back from death. That's ridiculously cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
But on the other hand, it's sort of like, and half of them I'm going to see again next week. And that's really not cool.
That's the downside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that just happened last week. I mean, we were making the same person. We had them 3 shifts in a row.
3 shifts in a row?
Yeah.
So what do you do? Like, how do you not just be a jerk? Because I think it would be pretty easy to be like, this is not working. Everyone can see it's not working. You know,
what really intervenes, honestly, is this day and time where you can't really, I won't say have an intervention with somebody, like where you're going like, hey, look, man, what are you doing to yourself? You know, because there's so many people out there with cell phones and they'll spin it.
Yeah.
They're videoing you the whole time. I get videoed almost every single call.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. They'll walk up, ask my name, you know, start stating stuff on their phone. They're just looking for a problem, you know, and we're just there to help.
I can't imagine a situation where I needed fire and EMS and my reaction is, hey, I'm going to video them on my phone to try to get them doing something stupid.
Yeah. Well, we are prone to do stuff stupid though.
Well,
so I can't really completely discount that.
Well, there is something that in all of us.
But you just realize that that's just the way of the world, and that's just how it is. And you know, only thing I can control is what I can control, right? And
that ain't much.
It's not, but what I can control is keeping them alive. And so I do everything in my power to get them back in, because one day they may have one of those aha moments where they go, you know what, I'm tired of this. You know, I'm gonna change my life. And if I didn't do my job on the front end, then they would never have that opportunity. So,
one version I heard of this was that what we do sometimes is stupid and bad and harmful, but we don't want our mistakes to become death sentences. They're not capital crime. I don't deserve to die for being an idiot.
I agree.
And I thought that was kind of a helpful way when my judgmental side flares up to be like, all right.
So that would have been my teenage years. You know, I would have been gone.
That's right. Wouldn't we all?
Yeah. Because I mean, like I said, I grew up in a great home. My mom and dad, we always went to church. I mean, we went to church every time the doors were open. I was super active in a youth group. I mean, I had Al and Marcia always around me. It's just being great counsel. You know, I mean, there's no telling how many times I've just called Al and asked him advice on life, you know, along with my dad. And went to college, and it was funny, like, I grew up going to church and trying to live a good life out of fear, because that's the way I thought it was supposed to be, not love, grace, and joy. I was always so afraid that I was going to do something wrong and be banished to the pits, the fiery pits of hell, that I didn't do it, you know? And I didn't know anything about grace, really, right? So that fear stuck with me all the way through pretty much high school. And then, you know, I just kind of, I don't want to say fell away. It was weird. I was still in the habit of going to church, so I still went to church, but my mind wasn't there.
Your body was there, but your mind wasn't.
Exactly. So I was doing no good, right? And just putting that false sense on. It made me feel good when I walked away, you know, like, oh, I went to church on Sunday morning. I'm good, you know, look at me. But I wasn't there.
Okay, this is a controversial opinion, but one of the things that I think that was kind of good from the COVID church shutdown, I think it made some people who were doing exactly what you were doing, you know, who were coming but not there, when they didn't come, I think sometimes it forced them to realize, I missed this, or I didn't miss this. And I heard from some people who said, I realized I didn't miss it, and that scared me more than the fact, and then that stems from
I can see that. Yeah. It wasn't until I met Susan and we were serious, and really when we got married. She's just such a better person than me, really and truly, and keeps me really grounded, you know. I owe everything to her, really, as far as where I'm at now in my walk, because she was always an inspiration. That the way she acted, you know, was just super slow to anger and very forgiving and very gracious and very loving, quiet.
Well, you can say all that you want, but I'm mad at her. Because she stopped teaching in the public schools my kids were going to before my kids got to have her.
Yeah, I don't blame you for being mad at her. I'm still mad at her. I mean, she's still a great person, but I get mad at her. So, yeah.
She is so good.
She is
so good.
She is very, very, very good.
So how did you start to make the turn from the fear-based religion to the I'm here in body but not in spirit? What you talked about her helping, but what did that look like?
I started finally maturing enough in myself to start studying on my own and just expanding, like trying different places, talking to different things, being a part of different groups that were not just associated with the standard Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night kind of people. And it really opened my eyes up on how awesome God is and how much he loves us and how grace, man, like how the forgiveness aspect of everything. And so that is when it hit me, that like I've been living my whole life going to church because I've been scared to death that if I missed one Sunday or I missed one Wednesday, then I was done.
Yeah.
And it drove me now to the point where I really, 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 really try to make sure that my kids do not live in that fear.
Yeah.
Because it took me 20 something years to get out of that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was just so much time lost. Now, in the youth group, never felt that.
Right.
Ever. One of the saddest times I think was I left that youth group probably mid high school, and we started going to church in Dixon, and that was probably one of the saddest times in my life. I remember in high school because like I had such a connection with people in the youth group and with Alan Marcia, and just not having something because we used to do something every Sunday night.
Yeah.
Like it was every Sunday night. It was after church, and had a little quick Devo, hung out together, and we didn't always have to go somewhere, like.
It wasn't fancy.
Yeah. Just always, most of them was Alan Marsh's house.
Yeah.
And, or maybe at the church building. And I just missed it so, so bad. And as I got older, I had to have a job, life kicked in, right? You start growing up, and I wasn't able to be a part of those things as much because I was working. And that really, really hit hard. And that's one of those things, you always want better for your children than what you had.
Yeah.
That goes along. That's one of the few things. But like I said, I had a great childhood, so I can't really wish anything any better for my kids than what I really had, because then they would just be like super spoiled brats, So.
Well, it's neat to me to hear the stories of connections that you've been telling. You've talked about the connection to Alan Marcia and what a difference that made in your faith. You've talked about the connection to Susan. You've talked about the connections with the 7 guys in the fire hall. And in church, so often we throw around the word fellowship. We have an activity and we call it a fellowship. But fellowship is such a deeper concept than that. It is this, I can depend on you, you can depend on me. We help each other. It's friendship. It's not, what I don't like about the word fellowship at church is so much of what we do is superficial. We have a meal after church and we sit around and make kind of crummy small talk. Well, fellowship is Susan helping you become a better human being. Fellowship is the guy on your team that has your back no matter what.
Yeah, I think the biggest draws to this church is people being real.
Yeah.
For so long, I've looked for a church. I've looked for a group of people that weren't afraid to be real, because most of the time, people are real Monday through Saturday. But on Sunday, they're a different person.
Yeah. How you doing? Fine, brother.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, how's your week been? Oh, it's been fine. And I mean, they could have had the worst week ever, and they're just going to tell you everything's going to be okay. In the bad side, to flip that a little bit is that I look at them in the eyes and I can't tell because I don't know them.
Right.
And I should be able to walk in and look at you and say, you're having a bad week.
Yeah.
And I bet it's X, Y, and Z. right? I can already name the 3 things that are bothering you.
Well, because you could do that for Susan, and you can do that for the guys in the fire hall.
Right.
But we can't tend to do that for each other at church.
Because we don't ever open up. We won't ever completely open up because I think we're so afraid somebody's always going to pass some type of judgment on why we are hurting. But the thing is, we all have the same problems.
Yeah.
You know?
So here we are. We're half an hour into this podcast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
And the whole point of this thing was to try to be one other place where we learn to open up to each other. You started this conversation pretty nervous. I mean, you're fidgeting with your hands and you realized you were doing it, but right now you actually look comfortable again.
I am.
And what we find out is it's not that bad once we do it.
You're
But
right.
in church, we just don't ever take that step of, let me tell you what's wrong. And what stinks, there's always that one person who tells you everything that's wrong. And then it's sort of like the rest of us don't want to be that guy. So like, I don't want to burden Justin with my stuff. He's got enough stuff on his own. He doesn't need to hear about what I'm struggling with. And we make these excuses.
Have you ever noticed that if you did, and whoever is even listening to this, when you were in a small group, how close you get to people pretty quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of times, it doesn't take very much. But it's got to take work on both parties.
Yeah.
That it's not going to be on Sunday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
You got to go have lunch. You got to meet somewhere. You got to do something. You have to be vested in each other. Once you get vested in each other in your lives, then it gets real.
That's why those groups need to be in houses, because you need to come to my house and see that the sink is full of dishes. You need to see that there's unfolded laundry in the basket by the bed. And it was there last week too.
Yeah. How many times have you been to someone's house and it was, if it was dirty, you're kind of like in the back of your mind, like, oh, thank gosh, they're human.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad that I'm not the only person in the world that, the yard's not cut every single day.
Their grass grows too.
Because the perception of life is what? It's everything's perfect, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what stinks, man. Is that everybody tries to put a spin on everything, like how perfect life is, when it is completely and totally imperfect.
Yeah.
And the only way we can make it tolerable is just Jesus. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's what gets you through the day. That's what should get you through the day.
But we have to be real enough to admit that. And we don't always like real, because real is messy. You may say something I don't like, or, or I disagree with you. And so we do this thing where we just sort of self-censor, where we don't really need Jesus as much as those people do,
Right. And it's crazy that my struggles, we always, I guess back up, we talk about sin and struggles, and it kind of goes hand in hand, right? And so my sin is always different from yours in a sense, because that's my perception.
Yeah.
And also, we have a horrible tendency to where we rate sin, right?
Yes.
To where always the top big ticket items for me are obviously something that I'll never have to encounter. Like, murder's really horrible, but I never have any intentions of killing anybody.
Yeah.
So I can say that, but gossips, it's not that bad.
Yeah, no big deal. No big deal.
Right.
Well, it's funny to me how stigmatized certain sins become in church. Even if you are trying to help somebody have a better life,
Mm-hmm.
well, you can't be associated with those people.
Yeah. Yeah, because Jesus never was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he always was somewhere that everything was right.
Yeah.
And that was sarcasm.
Yes,
by the way.
yeah. We both knew that. I just realized everybody else
I just could realize that no one could actually see me in my face.
One of the fun things about the radio show is how many times we have made air quotes and then realized no one could see them.
Yeah.
So much for that.
It's just crazy.
Reality, vulnerability, honesty. I'm sorry to keep going back to the fire hall.
No, go ahead.
Probably as a guy who has not actually experienced it, I have sort of an idealized version of this in my head. But to me, one of the things that guys who are in the military,
Mm-hmm.
they're in a team, guys who are in police, guys who are in law enforcement, it happens in some other places in society, they experience real connection, real brotherhood. I suspect a lot of what happens in a fire hall, while it might not all be the most religious thing that happens, is closer to fellowship than what happens in 90% of churches on any given Sunday.
I'll agree, absolutely. The bond you have, and I'm sure it's not as deep. It may be as deep. I don't know. I was never in the military, but I was going to say of people that were in a unit together, but you can't get any closer than the people I work with.
Yeah.
And I have that connection. Like when I walk through the door, just yesterday we had to have a after action review of the Covenant shooting. So everybody that was in the fire department that was part of that event was there. And so we all sit down, and I immediately look at my guys, and I can go ahead and tell you exactly what they're thinking and how some of them wanted to be there, some of them didn't want to be there. Some of them already were just itching to say something.
Yeah.
To get it off their chest. And some people were like, look, just let me get out of here and get away from this. But that comes with, like you said, just knowing someone, being vested in them.
To it. You can't do that in, well, I'd say an hour on Sunday, but that's not even fair, because for an hour on Sunday, you sit and listen to somebody who's lecturing or leading a song or leading a prayer. What you really get is 5 minutes on the way in, 5 minutes out. It's 10 minutes on Sunday. And we're shocked that we haven't developed this.
Yeah. One of the best things is the Wednesday night meal ministry has helped so much do that.
Yeah.
To where you sit down and for at least 45 minutes, you're going to talk and hang out and find out about somebody's week and find out their likes and dislikes.
Yeah.
And be genuine with them.
That's so big.
It may take a couple of weeks, but eventually, you kind of break the ice and you start kind of expanding out and not just sitting at your table with your family and kind of bumping and moving around and finding out about more people. And that's the stuff that this church does that makes a difference, that keeps people coming back and wanting more.
You described your relationship with Susan as you became friends for a year.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons you guys have the good relationship that you have, is that basis of friendship. And what would it look like?
That, and she just lucked out.
Well, is that what happened?
Yeah.
Has it ever occurred to you God might be punishing her?
Yeah, daily.
Okay. She was actually...
But then she's so nice. Like, I can't think of anything she really did bad. Maybe she's paying penance for some of the stuff I've done.
Well,
and he said, just you're guilty by association. So there you go.
Man. We've talked about fellowship. We've talked about kind of the dealing with cynicism, compassion fatigue. We've talked about a little bit. We've talked a little bit about how your faith journey has kind of changed over the years from fear to grace and the Spirit of God. Is there anything you want to talk about we haven't talked about? You got a good story you can tell me?
All my stuff's boring, man.
Oh, your stuff's boring. That's garbage. You
It is.
jumped out of helicopters.
Yeah, but I'm not the only person that's done that. So
I haven't done that.
But
do you think either of our other 3 listeners who jumped
yeah, that was a brief, like I said, that was we were talking about this earlier, that was a brief stint there for a little while. The fire department thought it was a great idea to let people jump out of helicopters in response to big events like natural disasters.
Yeah.
And so we trained on that until one guy fell and broke his back, and that kind of stopped that one pretty quick. So
inconsiderate.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, we called him Humpty Dumpty for forever. And he'll still answer to it,
That's amazing. That's amazing.
But I made some pretty cool stuff. I got to, like I said, the Nashville bombing. I got to be there. I was one of the first guys there for that. And the flood of 2010 was horrible, man.
Yeah.
That was one of the few times that it got really, really dicey there.
Yeah.
Just that there was just so much water and it was coming up so quick. And you go to houses and people were like, no, we're not leaving. You're not going to get us. And then you would come back in about 30 minutes and you're like, hey, we drive the boat up to the second story.
Yeah.
And open the window on the second floor and go, you guys ready to go now?
You want to think about this one again?
Cutting people out of roofs. Everybody went to their attic and then they couldn't get out of their attic. So we were having to saw roofs and getting people out.
Oh, and I've read the horrible stories of Katrina where they would find people in the attics. Yeah. They'd find claw marks on the ceiling where people tried. And
it was crazy. There was a lot of people that got out and got on top of the roof, which made sense to me.
Yeah.
But so many of them just went right up in the attic.
Yeah.
And you'd go by a house and they'd be beaten and you knew people were there.
Yeah.
And then when you tried to find them, you could hear them in the attic. So we saw a hole and get them out.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy stuff, man. Apartment complexes, hundreds of people, and you're just having to get them out 4 and 5 at a time. They're getting in fights on the dry ground, trying to get on the boat first. I mean, it was insane.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. You've seen it all.
Quite a bit.
You don't want me to say that because you think the universe is going to throw something
Yeah.
terrible at you. Like,
Yeah.
oh, don't say
Yeah.
that. You know.
Next, I'm going to call you. I actually have to work Sunday,
Okay.
and I will probably text you in between services and say thanks.
Thanks. This was
Yeah.
your fault.
This is all your fault. What I'm doing right now.
You've had such a quiet day. Isn't that the other thing I'm not supposed to say?
Yeah.
That gets you.
Yeah. Has it been busy? And you're like, no. And then you make 30 runs later.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Well, Justin, man, thanks for the time and thanks for.
Oh,
sharing
thank you.
this.
It's this was fun.
You know, it's just neat because every story is different, and your and I's stories are similar in a lot of ways. That I didn't have some moment where the light shone on me. I didn't used to make meth in the basement.
Right.
I slowly conned Leslie into marrying me, and God has been entirely too good to me. But one of the things that I think people need to hear is that every story is different, and it gives you a different perspective. And I don't know if you've ever spent time just to sit and think, how many people are alive today because of what God has done through you? That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I never even, I've never thought of that.
I didn't think you would have because you're not the type who would.
I never even, that's never even crossed my mind.
But and I know it'd be impossible to know, but you think with every dose of Narcan you've given, or every time you've pulled out the AED, or every person you cut out of a car that was on fire, that if you had been 90 seconds later, I mean, there are no doubt thousands of people who the reason they're living and breathing in today is because God sent you. And that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. That's, it's humbling, I'm blessed to have my health and to do something like that,
Yeah.
That gift. I've never really, I guess I'm kind of lost for words right now.
Yeah.
Because I've never really thought of it like that.
Well,
It's just a job, it's a second nature. It's just what I got trained to do.
still a pretty cool job.
It's a pretty cool job sometimes.
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 So what's the one thing I can do that really ticks off the fire department most? Is that
Don't pull to the right.
Don't pull. Oh, get out of the way.
Yeah, they just get out of the way and pull to the right. Well, most people just lock down in the middle of the road and they think, well, fire truck going 70 miles an hour is going to just go right around me. Just move to one side.
They really should let y'all put cow catchers on the front of those things.
I completely agree.
It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Mad Max. It'd just be great.
The dash cam footage would be awesome.
Oh, yes, it would.
Yeah.
Then they have to have a second truck following you for all the things
right.
that get created. Well, Justin, thanks for your time. And friends, thanks so much for listening to us today. And I just hope that this is a little reminder of the ways that God is at work in your stories. Until then, until next time, I can't wait to hear what God's up to in your story.
Thanks for listening to Rough Drafts. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. While you're at it, help us spread the word by leaving a rating and review. Until next time, let's keep looking for how God writes His love into our stories.